So our first semifinal match here, Andrew Jessup with Grixis Death Shadow going to be on the play. Going for the back-to-back wins here on the SCG Tour. Both players have kept on 7, and we are underway. Grixis Death Shadow starting on Scalding Tarn. And for Muller, it's going to be sleight of hand, mentioning that the deck, with the release of Ixalan, this is our first modern event since then, getting to up its cantrip count from 12 to, in Paul's deck, or from 8 rather, all the way to 12, playing 4 Opt, along with these sleight of hands and Serum Visions.
Cast off Snow-Covered Island. There are some regular islands in the deck. You might be wondering, do you ever Gifts Forgiven with 2 of these basics in your pile? No, you don't, but it's fancy.
But you could.
Yeah,
So why
the option's there.
End step here, Andrew's going to fetch Shocked 17, cast a Thought Scour on himself. Getting him closer to those early delve threats.
And this is the fetchless version of Storm.
Okay, so there's no...
Heavier on
Sure,
basics, 4
sure.
Canal, 4 Steam Vents, 4 Shivan Reef.
Yeah, and then 5 basic lands.
So once you opt something to the bottom, there it will live. Suppose you can Gifts Ungiven to shuffle.
On the other side will be Inquisition of Kozilek, and we'll get our first look at the Storm hand. It's got a second land in it. We'll go through the other ones here. He's got a copy of Opt, Noxious Revival, Manamorphose, Gifts Ungiven, Grape Shot,
Pyretic
and
Ritual.
then Pyretic Ritual. Thank you.
The land being a mountain. A lot of rituals, Noxious Revival to stop you from really breaking the hand up with the discard spell.
Yeah, no 2-mana creature, so there's a possibility this is stranding some Fatal Push or Terminate in Andrew's hand.
So without making a bunch of land drops, it's hard to convert this hand into anything meaningful.
Yeah, it's got a lot of cogs. To that effect, Andrew could even just take Opt to try to have Paul miss some land drops.
Yeah, Opt and Manamorphose are both pretty tempting. You could just try to fight on the mana front. He's looking at Pyretic Ritual. That's the only mana generating ritual on its own right now.
Yeah. One of the things about Storm decks is they can be pretty resistant to targeted discard. Mass discard is another story, but you see here, there's no great pick for Inquisition.
Yeah. Part of the argument for Pyretic Ritual, and you see him pick that here, is with this mountain plus another land drop, Muller can Ritual and then cast Gifts Ungiven.
Sure.
Then he has just a lot more going for him.
All right, well, Watergrave will enter the battlefield untapped to send Andrew down to 15, and no play here as he passes back to Paul. Opt, the new cantrip from Ixalan, cast by Paul.
New to Modern, anyway.
Yeah.
Originally from Invasion.
He'll go ahead and he likes what he sees on top, so he'll keep it. Plays a Steam Vent tapped and says go. So some information there. Andrew knew that this land is a recent addition to the hand. It's not the mountain from earlier. Another Thought Scour. So Andrew's graveyard pretty full. See if he can produce a threat. He's got both Terminate and Stubborn Denial in hand. So he's going to go back to work with Thoughtseize. Paul's hand picked up a copy of Baral since last turn.
Get that out of there.
So I'm actually interested here. There is the Baral we could try to get rid of. At the same time, Andrew does have a Terminate in his hand that's targetless. Maybe he could keep the, he may want to try to keep the Terminate.
Well, it would be really nice if you take the Brawl, Paul Noxious Revivaled it.
Ooh, that'd be nice.
And then you terminated it.
And I think he looks like instead he's just going to go for the highest impact card. It's Gifts Ungiven that's selected.
Yeah, that's totally reasonable.
Yeah, I guess pound for pound that is the best card in his hand.
And the only ritual left in hand is Manamorphose. No big storm turn set up in that hand. So not too worried just yet.
Mountain from Paul, and he passes back. On our other semifinal, game 1 goes to the 7 seed. It's Josh Smith with Affinity taking game 1.
Had a fast start, I guess.
Absolutely. Storm can falter. One thing I'll give Affinity, though it doesn't usually win before turn 4, it's very consistent on turn 4.
Yes.
Andrew, another Thoughtseize. Just keeps going to work. Baral. See what was added? It was a land. So you have Baral, Grape Shot, Manamorphose, Noxious Survival, Snow-Covered Island. So with this being our third discard spell, I like what's happening here. And at the same time, I'm not a huge fan. So Andrew, he's really torn apart Paul's hand. But the problem is if you just don't have any pressure here, Storm doesn't mind. Eventually, Paul's going to get up to 6 lands, something like that, and just cast a Past in Flames, which he draws, and that'll win.
Yep. Andrew's going to need to start applying pressure. He's got to find a threat.
Yeah, sometimes you can see this Thought Seizes plus Graveyard Hate as a good interaction, but Andrew in the main deck doesn't have any of that. Fourth land by Paul, and he passes. I actually like how he hasn't cast Baral yet. He doesn't want Andrew to just, for free, get to terminate the Baral. He'll likely cast it on his combo turn, if at all.
Yeah, you want to be able to cast some more rituals in response to that kill spell, something like that.
Go back over to Paul. He's going to cast Manamorphose. Manamorphose making red and blue. This is on Paul's turn. And I think I like the experience Paul's showing here. It's just, you know, not pulling the trigger on Gifts Ungiven. It's just going through a couple Manamorphoses. As long as he hits his land drop and finds Past in Flames, he's good.
Yep, he'll get access to that right back and more.
You see, bring off 2 Manamorphoses just so he can play Steam Vents tapped. That's really nice by Paul. Says go. Andrew doesn't have pressure, and Paul intends to make him pay for it.
Yep. Yeah, Paul knows that right now he has inevitability.
So, an interesting situation happening here for Andrew. He has not found pressure, and you see on end step he starts fetching. It's the life total management on Andrew's side is difficult. Paul does have a Grape Shot in his hand. Andrew knows about it. That's fine. If he fetch shocks all of these, then he's probably too low and could just get, you know, mini stormed into Grape Shot.
Right.
At the same time, if he draws Death Shadow, he wants to make sure that it's formidable. He doesn't want just a 3/3. He'd much rather it be a 5/5 or a 7/7.
Right. Turn on this stubborn denial. That much he definitely wants.
Yeah. And I guess by just doing this one tapped fetch, he can be at 9 whenever on a moment's notice. That's enough to make the stubborn denial just into negate. Street Wraith to pick up for Andrew, which he could cast. It's there. You know it's there.
I think he's thinking about it.
He needs a clock. The problem is that then Stubborn Denial is for sure down.
There you go. Cycles it.
All right.
If this cycles into Death Shadow.
How about another fetch land? You could have had a 3/4, Andrew. I don't know.
Yeah,
that wouldn't have won.
He could have lost with the 3/4 in play.
Andrew just says go. Missing on threats here. We go back over to Paul. Now the question for Paul is, has he found a copy of Past in Flames yet? Does he still have his land drop lined up? He does for the land drop. Here's land 6. And we're getting close to the point where Paul may start pressing some action.
Yep.
4 cards in hand. Pyretic Ritual, Baral. We know those 2.
Grape Shot.
Yeah, Grape Shot. Just says go. I really like this. Just, you got to show me that you have pressure if you're going to make me do something. And for Andrew, another fetch land picked up.
Yeah, you just can't win the game when you draw this many lands, certainly with 0 threats.
Another pickup here for Paul. He'll cast Baral here. Now Andrew has a Terminate.
Terminate's just +1 storm on that Grape Shot.
That's real. And you see Paul pulling out the counter. So 1 spell in the turn. Now he's going to do some work. Pyretic Ritual, 2nd spell, 3 red. Does Andrew respond? He does. Terminate will hit Baral. And Paul says, oh, no, we'll just make the stack real big here. In response to Terminate, let's do some more work. Manamorphose. This one costs 1 less thanks to Baral. 4th spell here. Remember, Paul has a Grape Shot in hand, and Andrew's down to 8. He doesn't have to find a Past in Flames. He doesn't have to make a huge storm here. He just Needs to play 3 more spells.
Right. Does not take much from this point.
And if you're in Andrew's spot, do you say you have a fatal push? Do you even want to pull the trigger here on Baral? That gives Paul another storm, and you know he has Grape Shot.
Yeah, I just don't even know if Andrew has any winning lines here.
I mean, Andrew's not, you can tell in his face, not thrilled about the game, but has to decide whether it's best to try to fight or to not add to storm.
Thinking about how he's going to sideboard for game 2, probably.
Well, Paul's hand, I don't think, has it locked up. Stubborn Denial in Andrew's hand, too. He could really add to storm if he wanted to, but
once these spells resolve, you see there's 2 untapped islands, Manamorphose plus 2 mana, Poetic Ritual plus 3 mana.
yeah.
Depending what Muller draws with the Manamorphose, he has plenty of mana left over to just keep casting a couple more spells.
Fatal Push hits the Baral, that's fine by Paul. Manamorphose resolves, makes red-blue, draws a card. Poetic Ritual resolves, goes up to 5. But there have been 5 spells cast this turn. It's not going to take too much work for more Grape Shots from Paul.
Yep.
Here's a Grape Shot. That's the 6th spell of the turn.
Yeah, call it 6 Grape Shots.
Puts Andrew to 2. He'll remand the original copy. Andrew will Stubborn Deny. Paul pays, and game 1 goes over to Storm. It is Paul Muller, up 1-0.
Yeah, Jessup just never was able to get off the ground there.
Yeah, and you know, that's a dangerous spot here now in the matchup. You mentioned that Andrew Jessup's game 1 was pretty favored. The post-board games are going to get a lot closer. He had some weak draws there in game 1. It's not really on him, but that's one that he really would have liked to have won.
Yeah, definitely.
So looking at the sideboards, we'll start on Andrew Jessup's side. 2 Nile Spellbomb, 2 Young Pyromancer, 2 Teamer Battle Rage, 2 Leon of the Veil, 2 Collective Brutality, an Engineered Explosives, the 4th Stubborn Denial, and then another Kolaghan's Command.
Nihil Spellbomb's nice. It fights Past in Flames.
Yep.
You like it for that reason. Liliana of the Veil to kind of get cards out of the opponent's hand. Sometimes you can meaningfully edict them. It's a little bit slow, but I do think you want it.
Look, if the game plays out how that game just played, Liliana of the Veil would have been very nice.
Yep. And it's just like another thing that's kind of like a threat that you can produce.
Yeah.
Collective Brutality is actually a little bit dicey, in part because these Storms decks have moved away from 4 Goblin Electromancer. Even when they played that many, it was kind of a mistake for them to run it out in turn 2. You were never going to fully escalate the Collective Brutality. Though it is kind of a duress effect, getting gifts on given out of the hand is meaningful. I don't love the card, though.
Look at Paul's list. So he's got 4 Barals and 2 Electromancers. That's a pretty different split than you normally see, where you'd see 4 Electromancers, 3 Barals, due to him being legendary. Last game, Andrew Thoughtseize Paul and saw that Paul had the 1/3 legend. Paul just didn't play it for turn after turn after turn. Given that Paul is good enough at this matchup to know that he's supposed to do that, on Andrew's side, if I'm playing Collective Brutality, it's for the duress, and I don't think it's going to kill anything.
Yep. Yeah, the 4 Stubborn Denial, though, that one is good.
That's great. Last question with Teamer Battle Rage. We saw some closing speed. Certainly that's appreciated on Andrew's side. It can help him maybe shave 1 turn or 2 turns off Paul's clock. Is it worth that?
He's got to draw a threat. I think.
Sure.
I think that entire game was fine if he ever had a threat. I don't think that Battle Rage is part of the equation. You might touch on Engineered Explosives if you need to beat an empty, though.
Okay. Right, against all these a lot of this interaction, you'll see a player go toward Empty the Warrens. And speaking of that, we'll take a look at Paul's sideboard. He has 2 copies of Empty the Warrens. To complement it, he has a Dismember, a Wipe Away, 2 Shattering Spree, 2 Dispel, 3 Lightning Bolt, and a full 4 copies of Pieces of the Puzzle.
Get those ones in there.
Yeah, that card there from Dragon's Maze. Basically, it's a divination for the deck that never hits lands.
Right. Sometimes it doesn't hit anything, but usually it hits 2 instants and or sorceries.
Yeah, you saw how good Gifts on Giving can be in the matchup. This one great as well. I need to be corrected. This is the Shadows over Innistrad. I was thinking Clues Uncovered. That horrible Dragon's Maze card. This one's much nicer.
Oh, yeah. And then the 2 Empty of the Warrens. Against discard-heavy decks, you do generally just kind of want to reach for the empties because it's easier to build a relevant empty storm, especially against an opponent that's trying to be at 10 or less life on their own.
Yeah, and deck lists here are face-up. So, yes, in that Engineered Explosives, Andrew has an answer to Empty the Warrens. But that's his only answer. And he doesn't really have a way to find it. So, it's not like the Empty Warrens is going to surprise anyone, but it's probably just good.
Right.
Now, get ready for a second game. StarCityGames.com Game Night. Promotion here that happens all around the country. You can get exclusive pins and tokens just for playing in your local stores. For October, we have our newest addition to Game Night. It's the Vampire Nighthawk. So you can get this as a pin and token just for playing in events. Next month, they'll be giving away the Tarmogoat. That's, I guess, the starting point for every Tarmogoyf, though you hope it can get bigger. The 0-1 will be available. And if your store signs up now, we can get you signed up in time for the December promo, which is the Akrokan Crusader, the amphibian, the heroic amphibian from Theros. You can find a location near you and sign your store up at starcitygames.com/game night.
Jessup looking at his 7 for game 2. He's going to want a creature in it. Any creature. Not, I guess, Street Wraith is.
Any creature. Yeah,
Street Wraith is any creature.
Come on, he drew a threat last game.
You're right. He threw it away.
Yeah.
He threw it in the garbage. Ungrateful, that's what his problem is.
Turn 1 from Andrew. We're going to see a fetch shock here for Watery Grave. Is there any concern about being conservative with his life total here? Say he has 3 Street Wraiths. Just go to 11, or do you have to watch out for smaller grape shots if you do?
Well, you got to watch out for small grape shots on your Death Shadow if they're not big enough. There's not really a way around it.
And that's the worst one, so let's do it. All right. Turn 1 play is Serum Visions. Stubborn Denial and a fetch land on top. He'll take the counter spell. And go back over to Paul. It's going to be sleight of hand turn 1 for him.
Big fan of 7th edition sleight of hand. That nice pristine white border in there.
Yeah, thinks for a while between the two and ends up making a choice. Go back over to Andrew. Had a Street Wraith in hand last turn. Chose not to cycle it then, but he'll cycle it now.
He already has play lined up for the turn there.
And now he'll see what he's working against. Goes to 13 to cast Thoughtseize.
And once you make this action, Thoughtseize, you're getting a lot of information here. Nice to know what you already have in hand off that Street Wraith.
So, cards into Muller's hand. It's going to be just 2 copies of Remand. 2 rituals. It's going to be Pyretic and Manamorphose. 1 Grape Shot. And then 2 lands.
Remand actually pretty powerful against delve threats. Remanding Tasigur is pretty brutal sometimes.
And some updates from the other semifinal. That one has come to a finish. It is Joshua Smith with a 2-0 win over Michael Conroe's Storm deck. Means that Joshua Smith's Affinity will be waiting in the finals.
Yeah, that is an upset.
So Affinity awaits here between Andrew Jessup and Paul Muller. Muller with Storm up a game. About to lose a card, though Andrew's not sure which one. Remand's rather interesting here. It's so strong against delve threats, but the rest of Andrew's deck's very inexpensive.
You can do some work against those sideboard Lilianas.
Okay. Fair enough. Andrew actually chooses Remand as the card to take.
Put it out there as the land that would be the 5th card to delve a Tasigur, but no Tasigur available. Yes. If he snuck one in there, that would have been really nice.
Yeah, if he had one, I'd assume he'd make it. Now that the Remand is up on Paul's side, you really don't want to delve into a Tasigur.
Yeah, looks like the threat he has available. I believe there's a Snapcaster Mage in the hand, and that one's fine. Snapcaster Mage also doesn't line up great against Remand, though, because if they remand the spell you're trying to flashback, it's exiled and they draw a card.
For the second straight game, Andrew does not have one of his early threats. And you see, on the end step, he's going to crack his fetch land, but he doesn't go to 10. He's going to go to 12 here, showing some concern for his own life total.
Hey, he saw a Grape Shot.
Yeah. It's a smart move. It also shows that he doesn't have a threat yet. No Death Shadow or Tasigur. Oh, Jessup draws a land. He doesn't have actually a way to board more threats in, I don't believe. He has those Lilianas.
He has young Pyromancer in his sideboard. It's fine.
And here we're going to see Snapcaster Mage main phase from Andrew Jessup. Paul says that's fine. I'm not going to remand just yet. But this is an interesting play here by Andrew. He can't really play either of the cards in the graveyard. They'll just get remanded. He's really reaching for pressure with that Snapcaster Mage. I think it's because he has another in hand.
Yeah, maybe he's just getting the body on the battlefield.
Yeah.
Leave up Stubborn Denial, a little force spike action.
Plays it and says go. Well, Paul's got to be happy with that. He draws, it looks like Empty the Warrens. He's picked up a Dispel in the meantime as well.
A mini empty would be pretty good here. Jessup is at 12.
Yeah, you could see a mini empty. You might even just see a real cheeky play of Grape Shot your Snapcaster.
Your turn.
Yeah. We saw when both players just traded land drops last game. Paul was very okay with that.
Yep. Yeah, Jessup applying no pressure that game, applying very minimal pressure this game.
Yeah, just a 2-1 on turn 3. Paul will go ahead and give Andrew an extra Snapcaster hit by shocking for Steam Vents. So first damage, Paul down to 18. In hand here for Paul Muller, Remand, Pyretic Ritual, Manamorphose, Grape Shot, Dispel. Has a 6th card here, I believe Empty the Warrens.
So played Steam Vents on tap, thought about it, and passed turn. Maybe thought better of going for Empty the Warrens there.
Yeah, I mean, this also lets him cast Remand with Dispel up.
He could be going for Ritual Gifts Ungiven.
Yeah, if he found gifts, that could make the play. Inquisition of Kozilek from Andrew should force some action. There's nothing great to cast in response for Paul. He could remand it, but it is a 1-mana discard spell. And looks like he will. We'll cast Remand on Inquisition. Andrew's okay with that. Puts the discard spell back in his hand. Paul draws. Well, we may just see it again.
Yeah, seems pretty likely here. Yeah, with 2 on-tap mana, most of Jessup's stuff just does only cost 1.
All right. Insists Inquisition of Kozilek, and now we will see. Empty the Warrens, Pyretic Ritual, Dispel, Manamorphose, Grape Shot, and Serum Visions.
Imagine Jessup will be reaching for one of these rituals here. Unfortunately, he can't just take the empty itself.
Yeah, I mean, if he doesn't take a ritual, he's going to be worried that next turn Paul can play ritual, empty, make 6 goblins, and that might even just be enough.
Another land or another ritual also could make that a little bit more.
Right. The hard part is that Andrew's clock has this, his clock's really slow with Snapcaster Mage, and he has to leave Paul with Serum Visions, which means Paul can just make more land drops, draw more things. It's fine for him.
Right.
Pyretic Ritual is the card that Jessup takes. Tap land into play for Jessup, and we go over to Muller. To get a good chance at the draw here. Not a land, though. It's going to be Pieces of the Puzzle. This is a pretty big spell. Andrew knows it was the draw for the turn. See if this is enough to get the Stubborn Denial, and it is.
Especially with access to Snapcaster, Stubborn Denial. A clean counter seems pretty nice.
Bit of a test spell there from Paul. And we'll see Andrew going to Thought Scar himself. He's really trying to find a threat. Puts Fatal Push, Thoughtseize into the bin, finds Street Wraith. He's going to cycle that, go to 10. Yeah. Still can't, I mean, you can't really ever cast it in this matchup.
No, tapping all of your mana for a 3/4, far from ideal.
Maybe by turn 5 they just don't have it, you know? Seems less likely. But it looks like, I was going to say he found a Delve Threat, but it's just another discard spell. Inquisition of Kozilek. You can't take the Empty the Warrens. You can take anything else. And the priority for Andrew has been rituals every time. He's not going to deviate now. Takes Manamorphose from Paul's hand.
Yeah, and this hand needs a lot of help now that the Manamorphose is out.
Yeah, it doesn't
Storm
do
spells.
anything.
Yeah, only 3 lands in play, not much in the way of setup. Serum Visions, that'll help him dig a little bit, but the Dispel doesn't do a ton.
No, I mean, I guess it counters the flashed back Stubborn Denial. Andrew's down to 1 card in hand. It's Snapcaster Mage. You're right. Paul's a ways away from being able to win. He's also a ways away from losing. We see Serum Visions from Muller. He'd like to find some lands, and I guess cards like Pieces of the Puzzle would be very nice here.
Yeah.
Now what I like is I believe Paul drew another copy of Grape Shot this turn. He can really force Andrew to have something. He can just start Grape Shotting down these Snapcaster Mages. He's not going to do it yet. He scries double top with the Serum Visions and just says go.
Well, Jessup at 10 doesn't take a lot of help to make 2 Grape Shots just lethal.
Okay, so maybe you don't have eyes for the Snapcaster Mage. You just throw him upstairs.
With Muller at 14, Goblin Piker is not a huge concern. Coral Merfolk, I suppose.
Yeah. It didn't even get flashed into play, did it? It was sorcery speed, so it is Coral Merfolk. And Andrew draws another land. He'll pass. Paul going to opt end step, chooses to draw it. He knew that one. He knew this one. Looks like the second one down was a mountain, so there's land 4. Manamorphose from Paul. This is spell number 1.
Not a great one to Stubborn Denial, unfortunately.
No, he doesn't. Andrew doesn't have the 4-power creature, so that would just be a 4 spike. You assume Paul would pay, especially with the way this game's been going.
Right.
You see, wave of the hand. Ham says, sure. Mana tokens come out. 1 red, 1 blue. Paul will draw.
There is some question as to whether Andrew could beat 4 goblins.
Yeah, I mean, it's. You're right, too. And we'll find out. Paul, okay, second spell of the turn, empty the Warrens. Make 4 goblins. Andrew can Stubborn Denial one of the 2 empty the Warrens. That is so
And then he
anemic.
has 2 2-1s against 2 1-1s.
Yeah, well, 2 1-1s and also a Grape Shot that he knows about.
Right. It's a tough spot, though.
You know, you have to play to the top of the deck at some point here if you're Andrew. I would like to let this resolve. I would think, hey, if I don't draw a Tatsiger or a Shadow or an Angler, I'm going to lose. So
Sure.
step 1, assume I hit one of those here. If that's the case, do you want the Snapcaster in play or in your hand? And I think the answer's in your hand.
Yeah. That makes sense to me. He's going to need things more high impact than 2-1s. You're not going to beat these 1-1s with that.
You can't beat him with 2-1s, especially not when you know he has the Grape Shot to cover you. You can't, if you draw lands every turn of the game, which he did game 1 as well, you're just not going to beat very many people. You see, Fine says, yeah, you got some goblins. 4 of them will enter the battlefield. And that's going to do it for Paul Muller. He says go. And he draws a land. Yeah.
Ugh.
Well, there is a Serum Visions in Andrew's graveyard. Are you at the point yet where you cast it?
Probably. I'm not happy about it, but
Yeah.
I think it kind of has to be now.
Andrew's not going to. He says go. I guess there's some concern with 2 Grape Shots and that if you did that this turn, he'd actually lose. So the goblins attack. Andrew can block 1 of them. He'll take 3, drop to 7.
Well, I think that the Grape Shot actually means that he needs to have action right now because it's not hard to convert Grape Shot into lethal after you start connecting with these goblins.
Yeah, once Andrew's at 7, just you can't stop 2 Grape Shots.
Can't stop 3 goblins in 2 Grape Shots.
Just tap 2 for Grape Shot, tap 2 for Grape Shot is 3 damage.
Yep.
It's really not hard. Here's Opt from Paul. And as long as he leaves up a blue, Andrew knows that there's going to be no fight because there is a Dispel in Paul's hand that both players know about.
Yep.
After the Opt, Paul just says go. Draw from Andrew. Did he find something? It's got to fire off Serum Visions if he didn't. Or something.
No time to do anything else anymore.
No, I don't think he can't take a hit of 3 more, not with the Grape Shot in hand. So here is Snapcaster Mage from Jessup. Is Serum Visions his best cantrip? We'll look. It's going to be Inquisition of Kozilek. I'll go ahead and cast it. Desperate Ritual, Grape Shot, Mana Morphos Dispel. Right, I believe this is lethal. 2 goblins connect. Mana Morphos into Grape Shot, cast Grape Shot is 5 damage plus 2 unblocked goblins. So Andrew's going to have to take the Mana Morphos. Well, actually, he's going to have to take one of the Grape Shots because Paul can do the same play with Desperate Ritual.
Right.
There's no real way around it. He has to take Grape Shot. Already, Paul can storm up to 3 and 2 creatures go unblocked. It's very close to being lethal.
Not the exciting big finish you expect to see from a Storm deck, but it's good enough.
Great. The Storm player's going to work really hard to turn a Grape to empty for 4 1/1s and then Lava Spike his opponent with a Grape Shot. 2 damage will put Jessup down to 5. Does Paul have it yet? And maybe not. Look. It says, yeah, the Goblin's gone. I think that's Paul in his spot. I was going to say he might have to worry about a discard spell on the Grape Shot if he doesn't fire it off this turn.
Yeah. In the immediate sense.
Yeah, worry. Right. And then still, you have to answer the 1/1s. Paul just says go. He has a land as well, but I do like the patience from the Storm player here. He's just not going to do anything unless forced to.
Yeah, and this is very much a battle of attrition. The heavy sideboarding of pieces of the puzzle, that's all consistent with that.
Andrew's going to main deck a Fatal Push here, doing that so as not to add to Paul's Storm count.
Dispel.
Yeah, that's none of that.
Hornet Sting.
2 more. Andrew's down to 3. There is that Grape Shot in hand. Paul can go for the win here. And it looks like he's going to try. Starts with Desperate Ritual. Storms up to 1. Makes 3 red.
This looks like it's going to close it.
Second Desperate Ritual. Storms up to 2.
No splice, no need.
No, up to 4 red. And then he'll go ahead and add 1 extra Storm in case Andrew has a counter spell by using the Mana Morphos.
May as well.
Yep. Draws the card. Storms up to 4. And now here is Grape Shot. 4 copies of it targeting Andrew, and he has Alana Stubborn Denial. That's not going to do it. And the back-to-back is thwarted here by Paul Muller, the number 8 seed here with Gift Storm. He is your winner, 2 games to 0, and he's punched his ticket to the finals.